All right, so welcome to the Merix Media podcast segment, and we got some really interesting stuff you sent over all about James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to try and do today is pull out the most important insights, the stuff that's going to make a real difference in your life
Absolutely.
without you having to actually read the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding the leverage points within the information that you've shared.
Right.
And I think the most important thing that we see in Clear's work right away
Yeah.
is the power of small actions.
Right.
And he illustrates that so well in the story of British cycling.
Yeah, so British cycling, if you don't know the backstory, before the early 2000s, they were not doing so hot.
Not so hot.
They had won Olympic gold medal since 1908.
Wow.
No Brit had ever won the Tour de France in the 110-year history of the race.
Right.
And it got so bad that a major bike manufacturer actually refused to supply them with bikes
Really?
because they were worried about the impact it would have on their brand.
Well-
So that just kind of paints a picture of where this team was.
Yeah. Rock bottom.
They were rock bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
And then this guy, Dave Brailsford, comes in, and he's the performance director.
Okay.
And he completely changes everything. And his strategy was not to make some massive overnight change.
Yeah.
It was this thing that he called the aggregation of marginal gains.
The aggregation of marginal gains. I love that term.
Yeah, it sounds very jargony.
Yeah.
But the concept is actually really simple.
Yeah.
So basically, he's we're going to take every single aspect of cycling,
Right.
everything you can think of, and we're going to try to find a way to make it just 1% better.
Wow.
So it's not like doing one big thing, it's doing a bunch of really small things.
Yeah.
But consistently,
Yeah.
and he thought that these tiny little improvements,
Yeah.
they would all add up to a big advantage, and they looked at all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, what kind of things?
Well, I mean, some of it was obvious, like redesigning the bike seats to make them more comfortable,
Okay, sure.
and even rubbing alcohol on the tires for better grip.
Oh, interesting.
But then they got into the really interesting details.
Like what?
Okay, so they would have the riders wear these electrically heated overshorts
Okay.
to keep their muscles at the perfect temperature.
Wow, I never would have thought of that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And they didn't stop there.
So what else did they do?
They were using these biofeedback sensors to fine-tune each athlete's training.
Interesting.
They spent hours in wind tunnels
Oh, wow.
testing different types of fabrics, and it actually led them to have the outdoor racers adopt the lighter indoor racing suits.
For outdoor racing.
Yeah, for outdoor racing, it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, very cool.
Because they were so much more aerodynamic.
Right.
And they just looked at everything. They looked at different massage gels to see which one would help the muscles recover faster.
Wow.
They even brought in a surgeon to teach the team how to wash their hands properly.
What?
I know, to prevent the spread of germs.
That's crazy.
So, if your team's not getting sick as often,
Right.
that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
They also looked at sleep. So, every rider had their own personalized pillow and mattress,
Wow.
customized to them so they could sleep better.
That's amazing.
And then this is my favorite little detail.
Okay.
They painted the inside of the team truck white
They painted it white. Why?
so that they could see any little pieces of dust that might get on the bikes
Oh, wow.
because they didn't want anything to affect the performance.
That's incredible.
Right. So it was this really comprehensive approach.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And all these tiny little 1% improvements, they started to add up.
Okay, so how did that work out for them?
So just 5 years after Brailsford takes over,
Yeah.
they go to the 2008 Beijing Olympics.
Okay.
And they dominate. They win 60% of the gold medals available in track cycling events.
60%.
60%, that's crazy, right?
That's amazing.
And then in 2012, the London Olympics, same thing. They break 9 Olympic records and 7 world records.
Wow.
And that same year, Bradley Wiggins
Yeah.
becomes the first British cyclist to ever win the Tour de France.
Oh, wow.
And then Chris Froome, his teammate,
Yeah.
he wins in 2013, and then he wins 3 years in a row from 2015 to 2017.
Wow.
So that's 5 Tour de France wins in 6 years.
For a country that had never won it before.
Never won it before.
Unbelievable.
And if you look at it from 2007 to 2017,
Yeah.
they won 178 world championships
What?
and 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals.
That's insane.
So it's really considered the most successful period in cycling history.
So, how is that even possible?
Well, that's what James Clear wants us to understand in the book.
Okay.
How do these seemingly insignificant changes lead to these incredible results.
So it's like the power of small habits.
Exactly. And I think as humans, we tend to think that we need to make these big changes.
Right.
You know, we overestimate the importance of these huge moments, and we underestimate how much these little daily improvements can add up.
The small stuff.
The small stuff. Yeah, and we want to like make this huge leap, this transformation that everybody's going to notice.
Right.
But what Clear says is that like if you can get 1% better each day,
Yeah.
that might not feel like a lot in the moment,
Right.
but over the long run, the impact is much bigger.
Well, how much bigger are we talking?
So if you improve by 1% every day for a year, you end up 37 times better at the end of the year.
37 times better
Yeah.
just from 1% a day.
Yeah. And on the flip side, if you get 1% worse every day, you're basically down to zero.
Wow.
Like compound interest, you know.
With your habits.
Yeah, exactly. Clear says habits are the compound interest of self-improvement.
I like that.
So it's these small actions, whether they're good or bad, they just build up over time.
Okay.
And, you know, you don't see a huge difference if you save like $5 today
Right.
or if you spend 15 minutes learning something new.
Right.
But that's why a lot of people give up.
Because they don't see those immediate results.
Right. Exactly. And it's the same with bad habits.
Okay, how so?
You know, like if you eat one unhealthy meal
Yeah.
or you procrastinate for like an hour,
Right.
doesn't seem like a big deal at the time.
Right.
But if you keep doing that, those small things add up
They do.
and they turn into big problems.
Yeah. So what's a good way to like visualize this?
Oh, I love this analogy.
Okay.
Imagine a pilot flying from Los Angeles to New York.
Okay.
If they adjust the plane just like 3.5 degrees south
Yeah.
at the start of the flight,
At the start.
they're not just going to end up a little bit off course.
Right.
They're going to land in a completely different city,
Wow.
like Washington, D.C.,
That's a big difference.
right? So that tiny little adjustment at the beginning makes a huge difference in where they end up,
That's a great analogy.
right? And same with our habits.
Oh, I see.
These small adjustments can totally change the direction of our lives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Clear says it's not really about like these big life-altering moments.
Right. Yeah.
It's about what you do day in and day out,
The small stuff.
the small stuff, the habits.
Okay.
And it's not even just about where you are right now.
So what is it about?
It's about the trajectory that you're on.
Okay.
So somebody who is a millionaire,
Yeah.
but they're spending more money than they're making.
Right.
They're actually on a bad trajectory,
Okay.
even though they have a lot of money right now.
Right.
But someone who's broke, but they're saving every month,
Yeah.
they're on a good trajectory,
Makes sense.
even if they don't have much money right now.
Right.
And then the other thing he says is that the results that we see,
Okay.
like our net worth, our weight, our knowledge, the clutter in our house,
Yeah.
these are all lagging measures of our habits.
Okay.
So they're the results that show up later.
So if you want to change the results, you have to change the habits.
Exactly. You've got to change the habits.
Right.
So time is really important in all this
Why is that?
because it's like this amplifier.
Okay.
It makes the impact of our habits bigger.
So time can work for you or against you.
Exactly. Good habits make time your ally.
I see.
Bad habits make time your enemy.
Yeah. It's powerful.
So the Clear says habits are kind of like a double-edged sword.
Okay.
They can work for you or against you.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to be aware of the choices that we're making every day.
Right.
And it's not just about personal stuff either.
So where else does this apply?
So Clear talks about how this compounding effect happens in other areas of life too.
Like what?
So for example, with productivity,
Okay.
if you can automate some of your tasks,
Yeah.
that frees up your mental energy for other things.
Right.
Like more creative work.
Interesting.
Or with knowledge, like every new thing you learn,
Yeah.
it builds on what you already know.
Right.
And it makes you even smarter.
Okay.
And then even with relationships,
Okay.
like when you do small acts of kindness for people,
Mm-hmm.
that strengthens your relationships over time.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right.
Yeah.
But it works the other way too,
With the negative stuff.
with the negative stuff.
Yeah.
So give me an example of that.
So with stress, if you have like little frustrations every day,
Yeah.
they can add up and actually cause health problems.
Yes.
Or if you have negative thoughts all the time,
Yeah,
that can really damage your self-esteem.
definitely.
And then he even talks about how like outrage can compound.
Outrage.
Yeah. So if people experience a lot of injustice,
Oh.
even if they're like small things,
Right.
it can eventually lead to like huge social movements.
Wow.
So you can see how these little things
Yeah.
can have a really big impact.
They really can. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I found really fascinating in the book
Mhm.
was how Clear talks about what real progress actually looks like,
Okay.
because it's usually not what we expect.
So what is it like?
Okay, so he uses this analogy of an ice cube.
Okay.
So let's say you have a room that's at 25 degrees Fahrenheit.
And you start slowly increasing the temperature.
Okay,
The ice cube is going to stay frozen.
right?
26 degrees, 27,
Right.
27 degrees, 28 degrees.
Yeah,
Even at 31 degrees, it's still frozen solid.
still frozen.
But then you hit 32 degrees.
Yeah,
And suddenly it starts to melt.
right.
So it's like that 1 degree difference.
That makes all the difference.
That makes all the difference, right? But it's not just that 1 degree.
Right.
It's all the degrees that came before it.
It's at the buildup.
It's the buildup, exactly. And Clearpalm points out how a lot of things in life are like that.
Like what?
So, for example, with certain diseases like cancer,
Oh, okay.
it can grow for years without you even knowing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it becomes really aggressive.
Wow.
Or he talks about bamboo,
Okay.
how it spends years growing its roots underground.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden it shoots up like dozens of feet in just a few weeks.
that's true.
So progress is not always this smooth upward curve.
Right. It's not linear.
It's not linear, exactly. And Clear says that's why a lot of people give up on their habits.
Because they don't see the progress right away.
Right. They get stuck in what he calls the valley of disappointment.
The valley of disappointment.
Yeah, because they expect to see results quickly,
Mm.
but they don't.
And then they get discouraged.
And then they get discouraged, yeah, and they quit.
So what should we do instead?
Well, Clear talks about this other concept called the plateau of latent potential.
The plateau of latent potential.
The plateau of latent potential.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
It is.
But basically what it means is that all the work that you're doing, even if you don't see results yet,
Yeah.
it's not wasted.
Yeah.
It's like you're building up potential.
Storing energy.
Storing energy. Exactly.
And then eventually it's released.
Exactly. And when it's
Mhm.
released, it can seem like it happened overnight.
Like an overnight success.
Yeah, but that's just because people didn't see all the work that went into it before.
Right. They didn't see the plateau.
They didn't see the plateau exactly. And it's like, those tectonic plates.
That grind against each other for like millions of years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's an earthquake.
Wow.
So Clear says that change can be like that too.
So we need to be patient.
Yeah, patience is key. And he quotes this line from Jacob Riis.
Okay.
It says, "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stone cutter hammering away at his rock perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet, at the 101st blow, it will split in two. And I know it was not that blow that did it, but all that had gone before."
Wow.
And that's what the San Antonio Spurs actually have in their locker room.
That's amazing.
To remind them that mastery takes time.
Yeah, you have to keep going.
You have to keep going. Exactly. So the
Yeah.
point is,
Yeah.
when you're trying to build new habits,
Mm-hmm.
don't get discouraged if you don't see results right away.
Right?
Just keep going. Keep putting in the work.
Yeah.
Because eventually you will break through.
That's a great message.
Okay, so this next concept in the book I think is really important.
Okay.
And it kind of changed the way I think about goals.
How so?
So Clear says that we should focus on systems instead of goals.
Systems instead of goals. That's interesting.
Yeah, because we always hear about how important it is to set goals.
Right.
But Clear says that systems are actually more important.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Well, a goal is like a specific outcome that you want to achieve.
Okay.
But a system is the process that you follow to get there.
I see.
So, for example, if you're a coach,
Yeah.
your goal might be to win a championship,
Right.
but your system is everything that you do to try to make that happen.
Okay, so like the practices, the drills, the strategy.
Exactly. Recruiting players, managing your staff, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're an entrepreneur,
Okay.
your goal might be to build $1 million business,
Mm-hmm.
but your system is how you come up with ideas, how you test them,
Right.
how you hire people,
Mm.
how you market your product.
So the goal is like the destination and the system is the journey.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Okay, I get it.
And Clear asks this really interesting question. What if you completely ignored your goals?
Ignored your goals.
Yeah, and just focused on making your system better.
Interesting.
Do you think you would still be successful?
I think you might be right.
Yeah, and there's this famous football coach, Bill Walsh,
Okay.
and he said, the score takes care of itself.
Interesting.
Meaning, like, if you focus on doing the right things, the results will come.
So the system is more important than the goal.
In a way, yeah.
Okay, so why is that? Why are systems better than goals?
So Clear gives a few reasons.
Okay, I'm listening.
The first one is that winners and losers often have the same goals.
What do you mean?
So, like, every athlete in the Olympics wants to win a gold medal. Every job candidate wants to get the job.
Right,
So it's not the goal itself that makes the difference.
right.
It's something else.
What is it then?
The system.
The system.
Yeah, like those British cyclists.
Yeah.
They probably wanted to win the Tour de France for years before they actually did.
Right.
But it was the system that they put in place that allowed them to actually achieve it.
Okay, so what's the second reason?
Okay, so the second reason is that achieving a goal often only creates a temporary change.
What do you mean?
So let's say your goal is to clean your room.
Okay.
You can spend a whole day cleaning,
Yeah.
and you achieve your goal.
The room is clean.
The room is clean, yeah.
But then what?
But if you don't change the habits that caused the mess in the first place,
Right.
it's just going to get messy again.
It's a temporary fix.
It's a temporary fix.
Yeah.
So you're not really solving the problem.
You're just addressing the symptom.
Exactly. You're just addressing the symptom.
Okay, what's the third reason?
Okay, so the third reason, I think this is a big one,
Okay.
is that focusing too much on goals can actually make you unhappy.
What? Really?
Yeah, because you're always thinking like,
Like what?
once I achieve this, then I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always putting your happiness off into the future.
Right.
But with a systems approach, you can be happy now
How so?
because you're enjoying the process.
I see.
You're making progress. You're getting better.
That's a good point.
And then the fourth reason is that goals can sometimes be at odds with long-term progress.
Okay, how so?
So think about somebody who's training for a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal is to finish the race.
Right.
But once they finish the race, they might stop running completely
Oh, I know.
because they achieve their goal.
Right.
But with systems, it's about continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about achieving one specific thing.
So it's more sustainable.
It's more sustainable.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is
Yeah.
if you're having trouble sticking to your habits
Yeah.
or reaching your goals,
Mm-hmm.
it might not be because you lack willpower.
Right.
It might be because you have a bad system.
Exactly. You need a better system.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this is one of the most powerful lines in the book.
Okay.
Clear says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems."
Wow, that's powerful.
Right. So it's all about the systems.
The systems, yeah.
And that brings us back to the atomic habits.
Okay.
So we talked about how important it is to make small changes.
1% improvements.
1% improvements. Yeah.
But what makes them atomic?
So Clear says that atomic habits are not just any small habits.
Okay.
They're the building blocks of a larger system.
I see.
It's like atoms are the building blocks of molecules.
Right.
Atomic habits are the building blocks of remarkable results.
Mm-hmm.
So each one might seem insignificant on its own,
Right.
but when you put them all together,
Yeah.
they create something amazing.
So atomic habits are small, easy to do,
Yeah,
and incredibly powerful over time.
exactly. And that's the key takeaway for you.
Okay.
If you want to make real change in your life,
Mm-hmm.
stop focusing so much on these big, ambitious goals
Right.
and start building systems of small atomic habits,
Okay.
because that's how you're actually going to get results.
Just like the British cycling team
Just like the British cycling team.
with their marginal gains.
Exactly. So
Right.
think about what systems you already have in place in your life.
Yeah.
And where can you make some small improvements?
That will add up over time.
They will add up over time, exactly. And if you have any questions about how to do that,
Yeah.
we would love to hear from you.
And if you found this Merex Media podcast segment insightful, please give this video a like.
And share it with anyone who might find it helpful.
And be sure to subscribe to the Merex Media YouTube channel.
For more deep dives into fascinating topics.
Just like this one.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching.